You know, there are some things which may be terribly important for a nation, but people don't discuss them much. Yeah, they don't discuss them much because some people find them technical. Hiyo ni kitu ya watu ambao wamesoma judiciary, mambo ya wakili. And yet meanwhile, the country is moving into a situation where somebody has absolute power. Yeah, like in the Moi days. What am I talking about? Stay with me on this show as I break it down into very simple language which everybody can understand. Sio kwa watu wameenda shule peke yake, lakini ni kwa kila Mkenya afikirie na atafakari. Because in my opinion, there should be very serious public outcry over this issue. That's how important it is. Now, very quickly, please remember to give me a like. Yeah, that will help to extend the reach of this video. And weekly intelligence briefings number 89 has been delayed, but will be released in the next few hours. So please be patient. We had a small technicality. We had a delay due to unavoidable circumstances. Now, regulars on this channel already know that we take our work here very seriously. Our research is thorough, and I go to great lengths to ensure that the information I give you is spot on to the best of my ability. That doesn't mean that I don't fail sometimes. I do. But I do everything in my power not to fail in that responsibility. Therefore, my apologies for the delay, but in the next 4-5 hours, weekly intelligence briefings number 89, moto kuliko pasi ya makaa, will be out. So in case you're not yet a subscriber, please rush and take advantage of the dying, very amazing offer, yeah, which is almost kaput. So rush, where for only 999 Kenya shillings, you can get 6 months membership to my weekly intelligence briefings. I'm sure you can see details in front of your screen right now. And of course, that membership will mean that you get all the back editions of WIB, all of them right from number 1, yeah, which will give you a very fascinating time taking in information that is not the public domain. Yeah, so please take advantage right away. Finally, please take time right at the tail end of this video, because I'm going to introduce you to another video on this channel that maybe you missed, that most probably you missed. Okay, so stick around until the end and you will see that, and I'm sure you will be amazed, delighted, and you'll want to take in this video. Right guys, twende kazi. One of the biggest concerns in Kenya today, which every Kenyan should be very, very worried about, is unfortunately a boring topic. Because when you start talking to Kenyans about judiciary, hiyo mambo ya wakili, hiyo mambo ya Supreme Court, sitaki kusikia. Very few Kenyans are actually interested. And yet this is terribly important. Terribly, terribly important. Because you see, we have some very disturbing patterns starting to emerge in our country, which mean dire consequences for all of us. Without exception. It doesn't matter whether you're UDA Damu or ODM Damu. It doesn't matter. It affects each and every Kenyan. And therefore, in my opinion, it is very important for people to pay attention. And this is why I've decided in this video to break it down, standard 2 language, because sio sisi sote tulisoma. I appreciate that. And the fact that you did not go to school is not your fault in most instances. So those of us on this channel who are very educated, please bear with me. Now, the best way of simplifying this emergency, very serious problem we have in Kenya today, which is clearly being seen in a pattern, is to put it like this. Hii nyumba haina mama. This house has got no mother. You see, the nature of life is that life has checks and balances. Not just our constitution. Life, the Almighty God created it, has a lot of checks and balances. Now in the home, in the family, one very important check and balance is the mother. This check and balance is very important in the instance where you have a very brutal, dictatorial father leading that home. So the children have misbehaved. And so the draconian father comes home in the evening and says, tomorrow, you kids, including that 5-year-old, will walk to school. And the school is 5 kilometers away. And so because you children have behaved badly, I want to discipline you. You will walk to school. You must wake up at 2 a.m. to start the walk, so that you make it to school on time. And then in the evening after school, you will walk back. And I don't care that you have to walk such a long distance, that you'll pass that area with wild animals when it is dark. Shauri yenyu. That's what I've decided, and it's final. Now in a home where there's no check and balance, where there's no mother, that is precisely what is going to happen. And there may be very serious consequences, which even this draconian father will regret later. But then of course it will be too late. But in a home where there's a mother, she will go into the children's bedroom and tell them to stop crying. Don't worry, I'm going to handle this. And then in the bedroom, huyo dictator atapewa style nyingine mpya. Atazungushwa, apepetwe, and then at the end of it all, he will have no option but to smile. I'm sorry if I disgust you. I'm just talking about the reality of life. And when he's smiling, trying to recover his breath, saying to himself, I am so lucky that I have such a sweet wife, etc., etc. Then the check and balance of that home will bring up the topic. You know this thing about the children walking to school? I know they did something very naughty. I know they made a mistake. But my dear husband, I would like to make another suggestion. For punishment. If it will please you. And of course the woman's soothing voice will get to the man. That is the way a man was wired. He has no option. Lazima ataingia box. And so the next morning as usual, watoto watachukua pikipiki to school. And then on the way back, the same thing. They'll come back with a motorbike. And their punishment from the draconian father has been delegated to the mother. It may not even take place, but the children will have learned their lesson. And those children are going to grow up normal, not abnormal. Checks and balances are critical. And that is why they are in our constitution. and in every constitution. Even the constitution for your chama. Yeah, checks and balances must be there. And they're even more important for a nation, especially a young democracy like Kenya. Now, the disturbing pattern that suggests that in Kenya today we are heading to a situation where there are no checks and balances, where there are zero checks and balances, started even before the elections. And this is something that is still disturbing me a lot to date, and should disturb every Kenyan. UDA supporters, even on this channel, were very confident. They were predicting what the judiciary is going to decide. And they were predicting this, take careful note of this, even before the case was before the judiciary. And many of you on this channel will bear me witness, because some of those UDA insiders are right here. They were telling us that the petition over the presidential race will go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court will rule in favor of the UDA presidential candidate. Isn't that what they told us? And isn't that what precisely came to pass? Now, when you're making such a prediction, this is important to note. What you're saying is that it does not matter what evidence is going to be produced. And you see, it's evidence which brings a court to a decision, a ruling. It should be evidence and nothing else. But now they're telling you that will not matter. And indeed, it did not matter. Even information from an insider, somebody who's actually inside, organizing the stealing of votes, and who saw an affidavit, that evidence, rubbish, it did not matter. Actually, when you think about it, this thing started even before that, with something called the BBI. Again, UDA people told us the BBI is going nowhere. And a case was filed, and you saw what happened. Now, in that kind of environment, and with that background I've given you, the latest developments are very worrying. A nominee for the position of cabinet secretary, who had a criminal case going on, suddenly, very conveniently, right on time, the Director of Public Prosecutions woke up one morning and decided to drop the case, along with other cases. Now I want you to listen in to the views, very well informed views, of nominated Member of Parliament, John Mbandi. What he has to say about this latest development. Very, very instructive. Just listen in.
First, Kenyans decided to create an independent office under Article 157 of the Constitution. And the idea was that before, this office used to be under Attorney General, which was basically executive. So we wanted to allow this office not to be controlled by anyone. And in fact, the Constitution is very clear, not to be controlled by anyone or any institution. And well, the office has been given the powers to terminate or discontinue cases under Article 157(6). But you have to do it bearing in mind that there is public interest. And so the question that I ask with many cases, she has singled out one. But I tend to think that this one of Chumo probably was added so that the case of Aisha Jumwa and others who were terminated for political reasons could fly. The first question I would ask the DPP, and he has a responsibility to explain to Kenyans, because his office is a public office, is either the cases were political or the withdrawal or termination is political.
Right.
It can only be either. So either these cases, he should just come and tell Kenyans whether he was prosecuting these cases on political grounds, or now he's terminating. The cases are just okay, there's nothing wrong with them, but the termination is political. It will fall on either. Lastly, I would say, what I don't understand with the Director of Public Prosecutions, before the cases are taken to court, he always insists that the investigation is done and conducted properly. How many times have we seen files being returned to DCI, EACC? Many times, because he's not satisfied that the case is watertight. Now, once you have proceeded with the case to court and you started the trial, then you turn around and say the case is now not watertight. Then we start asking whether there is competence in that office. So as Kenyans, and especially most of us who are not lawyers, but who pay him, we have a right to be told. You don't just wake up one day and tell us that now the corruption case that was facing Aisha Joma on the CDF, now that case falls. What happens to the people of that constituency who feel that they didn't get services because their money was embezzled? So we need to take care of public interests when these cases are being dealt with. So as I conclude, I want to hear from, and I agree with the LSK, where she belongs, that he needs to be given a few days to tell us exactly what happened. In fact, he should have told us as he was withdrawing these cases. There's nothing secret about it.
What? Now, Honorable John Mbandi decided to include history into what he was saying. And he reminded us that during the draconian days of Daniel Toroitich arap Moi and the days of Jomo Kenyatta, the judiciary, the AG, the equivalent of the Director of Public Prosecutions today, in those days it was the Attorney General, who was in charge of public prosecutions. This other post was created just the other day. In those days, all these offices were controlled by the executive. And what that meant is that if you have a problem with the government of Kenya, you could go nowhere. If you had a problem with something that the government had a different view about, you would go nowhere. There was nothing, absolutely nothing you could do. Now my simple question is, are we returning to those days? Because all the evidence before us tells us that that is precisely where we are going. Indeed, that is precisely where we may already be. What? Now, is that something that should concern all Kenyans? Or it is something that we should ignore? Boring, judiciary manenos. Wachana na hizo. You tell me. Because in my view, this is a matter of grave concern. Because it means that even if somebody goes to court over this Aisha Juma issue, nothing will happen. Nothing. Because if we're to look at the pattern that has emerged, nothing will happen. You can go to court. The case can take so many months, but the results are predictable. Oh boy. Where is Kenya heading? Because these checks and balances were there, so that in case you get a president who has no time to follow our constitution, they would have a hard time. There are those checks and balances in place. But are those checks and balances still in place? Are they? You tell me. Judging by what has happened, very conveniently for the government, at every turn, you tell me, are all these coincidences? Are they? Or do we have to quote the favorite catchphrase of UDA, do we have judiciary capture and DPP capture? Is that what we have? So that what the executive decides is final. Hakuna discussion. That draconian father, what he decides to do with his precious children is final. Hakuna mama, no checks and balances. God Almighty help Kenya. Until next time, this is Kshs Kumekucha.